I want to welcome everyone to this session. This session is called Unifying Organizations Through a Lens of Care, where two great leaders, Dr. Naughton and Dr. Simmons, are going to be answering some of our questions as well as some of yours if you'd like to put some in the Q&A. I would like to introduce them first and really tell them thank you for being willing to come and share how they unify two very large organizations actually using that lens of care. So Dr. Caleb Simmons is the Executive Director of Online Education at the University of Arizona. Welcome, Caleb. He's also a professor of religious studies and faculty director of the Interdisciplinary Studies program. He specializes in digital and online learning and religion in South Asia, especially Hinduism. Welcome. And Dr. Blake Naughton is Vice President for Academic Affairs, Teaching and Learning for Online Initiatives at the University of Arizona Global Campus. Dr. Naughton's scholarship and teaching have focused on work-based learning as a catalyst for individual growth and organizational performance, what we're all about here. Dr. Naughton and Dr. Simmons will be answering questions associated with uniting organizations through a lens of care. Dan, would you like to get us started off with some of the questions we've been submitted? And welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, Dan.
Sure. So I'll ask Dr. Naughton first, and then I'll ask Dr. Simmons the same question. So Dr. Naughton, you'll have the disadvantage of having to go first, but Dr. Simmons will get to, he'll have the disadvantage of not repeating what you said. So, okay. So first question is, how important do you believe using a care lens has been to the process of unification between UA and UAGC?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'm happy to have this conversation. I really appreciate the idea of thinking about our unification from a care lens. And this is so important that I don't know how many of you get Inside Higher Ed emails, but just today they announced a webinar coming up in April of caring for students during mergers and closures. So isn't that amazing that it's exactly what we're talking about here today? And we're not the only ones that are thinking about, well, how do you, they're obviously focused on students in that, but it's caring about our students, caring about our workforce, our faculty, our staff, all of it along the way. So I think obviously the importance is plain to many along the way. You know, I've actually been a part of multiple major reorganizations and kinds of mergers of different sort of teams and that sort of thing in my leadership career. And it's easy to get bogged down in the operational minutia and the how something goes here, and to forget that there are humans involved, right? Both the humans that are directly affected that are in our workforce, that are working through it, and the humans we seek to serve that might be disrupted by what we're often in these things where we're looking at a long game, that there's going to be a period of disruption that's going to be kind of bumpy and not great, but hopefully everything's really great for the coming years ahead. And I think we forget sometimes what that period of disruption might mean for the people we serve, our students, our learners, in the variety of ways. So with that in mind, you know, I think your question, Dan, about how we use the care lens, I think my primary purpose, and maybe this is because I see my role as our leader of our faculty primarily, and those great staff members that help support our faculty being successful. My primary role has been to care for them and to make sure that this is a process of unification on two different levels. One that cares about their careers and cares about respecting the R and our care acronym, respecting the work that they've done over their careers, and respecting having a respectful process that acknowledges that as we move through, and two, respecting a lot of the work that they've produced already, our programs, which is a big part of our unification as well, and the quality and intentionality we've come from our culture of care principles in building our programs and building the way that we serve our students and that sort of thing. So the exciting part for me is that from this care lens is that I've actually been able to talk about this care lens in the transition process as a way of introduction. So we're unifying with a group that doesn't know us. And if your calling card and introduction is, well, you know, this is a group that focuses on care of our students and the outcomes of our students and works in that way, That is something that colleagues from any place you're trying to work together with rally around and are there. Maybe they use different language for the ways that they're doing it, but certainly appreciate bringing that to it. So it's been an important part to me of framing what we're doing and to keep our people first and going that way. Caleb.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. And can I just say ditto and move on? Is that no? I appreciate that lens, and I think one thing coming from or the other side of the house of the unit, one thing that we've been hearing for the last few years is about budget revenue, budget revenue. We hear this constantly, and I think that it's very easy in those cases for us to not be concerned with anything other than revenue. But I think one thing that's been really emphasized by the executive leadership team and coming directly from Senior Vice Provost Packard is that we do have a culture of care, and revenue is not our North Star. And if we have the correct North Star and our objective is to serve our students with care, with compassion, thinking about meeting their needs, the rest of those things will follow. So I think that is a key portion of having an actual culture of care, is remembering what we're here for, what our objectives are. And when there may be external pressure about revenue, we know that if we keep the correct North Star, aligning it with our mission, serving our students, serving our faculty and staff as leaders, that this is going to actually move the business process along as well, and is going to lead to better enrollment. It's going to lead to better student success, to actually care about those individuals that we have. So I think that's been one major goal of the leadership team. Of course, we still have to answer the questions about revenue and all of that, but that not be our driving motivation being doing what's right by our learners, by our students, by our faculty, by our staff. And then those other things we keep in mind, but it's not ultimately what's driving us at the end of the day. And I think we're starting to see dividends on those investments already in different student success metrics, in different ways that the online initiative organization is being talked about in different circles. People are seeing this investment in our students in a true North Star of student first approach.
Caleb and Blake, I love both of your comments, and I think it's so applicable to all organizations out there to know your why. What is that not North Star, and how much more important it is to take care of those who are supporting your why, that it will all come down in the end to where we all want to be. So thank you for that. Caleb, we'll start with you on the next one. So how have your actions, decisions toward unification differed under a lens of care than it would otherwise be? So if you didn't have this specific lens of care, are there places you think that we could get lost in that? And you kind of stipulate a little bit to that, but could you advance that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this as a driving, motivating factor for the strategy really changes it to people oriented as opposed to numbers oriented. And it's a lot easier to have a spreadsheet with just numbers and make decisions based on that until you start considering the real life ramifications that this has. So, I mean, there are ways to increase revenue, increase enrollment that are within the rules, but are just not really taking a student first approach. It's taking sometimes we take an institution first approach. Sometimes it can be a faculty first approach, a staff first approach. And all those things are good. But again, that's not the reason why we're here. The reason why we're here is to transform the lives of learners. And when we care about them, then that continues to trickle down into the other elements that now, we think of the role of the faculty is to transform those lives, and then they become a vital part of the culture and the context. Same thing with support staff, like it's all there, and now it becomes an organism that we need everyone, and everyone has to be valued in it, as opposed to just looking at the bottom line and working back from there. And I hate to just completely beat this horse, but I think it is just so central to what we're trying to do, is really think about people and what people's needs are, and how we can empower people to do things. So I think taking that approach has just radically changed the conversations in the room. And I'd love to hear Blake's perspective on this. But really, when we're able to focus back to the students, it changes it from a cutthroat corporate conversation to now we're actually focused on really what we can do to change lives.
Caleb, I love that, and I'll get Blake's admissions as well. But again, for every organization, if you're not doing it the right way for the right reasons, what is the point? And I think that is really a phenomenal way that this organization has grown, and encourage other organizations to try it. It's challenging. It can be hard. You have to pull yourself back to that mode of people. They matter. And so I really commend our leadership for doing that. Blake, any additional thoughts on that?
I'll throw in one
Okay.
other thing that I also don't want to give the false impression that makes all of our conversations easy in ELT. In
That's
fact,
exactly right.
makes it harder often because we do care about our units, we care about our people, we care about our students, and so that leads to some passionate conversations, which are in the end very productive.
I think that's very transparent, Caleb, because so many people just think, oh, we just say we care. That's easy. It's not always easy. And it takes purposefulness and intentions. And so thank you for pointing that out, because it does create challenges at times that wouldn't exist if we just said what needed to be said. And so thank you for that. Blake?
Well, some of those challenges you just described are kind of attention and caring. And what I mean by that is, for example, sometimes as leaders, and a lot of this unification work is meeting with leaders on campus, their version, and with all great intent behind it, of caring for their people is to look at the health of their unit, whether it's a college, a department, or whatever, and try to think through what are the decisions during unification that'll protect that unit and therefore protect my people. And that's a way of caring. But we often are recentering the conversation like, okay, that I get that. And if your students first, and if serving the students is intention with that, then how do you reconcile that tension? How do you talk through that? The caring for our students may mean, for example, that we maintain a program that looks somewhat duplicative to a campus program because we serve students in slightly different ways, slightly different student populations. And while that may superficially feel like a threat to that team, and that, well, one's going to win out over the other, we can really analyze toward, well, what's going to be the best outcome for the students, both global campus students and main campus students. What's the best outcome for our students, and then find a caring lens for that. So again, that language, that anchoring language, is helpful in these conversations, because even going into a meeting, and Caleb's right, we have difficult conversations about what's the right path, is not coming for the most part with any ill intent. It's about, well, how do we serve better, and how do we do that? And so if we have a shared anchoring language, that's really helpful. And while the colleagues in main campus might not have the culture of care, language about it, certainly caring for students is important to our colleagues as well. And they again respect the way that we frame and purposefully work toward that.
Blake, and I just add to that real quick that I think that what you just pointed out is why it's so important for those of us who serve particular units, because we need to keep our units, in my case, faculty, in a healthy position during change, a place of trust, a place of, I hope, where they feel supported, because any change, even under a care lens, can be challenging. And so it's not just our executive leadership or just our part-time faculty. It is everyone that has to support each other through this, because there are so many pieces to that. And so making sure those of us in positions that we can specifically support our faculty or our staff to care and to feel cared about are going to help them to care about our students more. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Dan, you want to jump in with the next one?
Sure. Dr. Naughton, sticking with you, what has surprised you most about the unification process?
I think what surprised me most, so some of you all know as a undergraduate engineer, I feel like I think like an engineer. And to me, a problem to be solved can be engineered. And you create the little pathway, and you optimize and you maximize, and be like, okay, We've got it. Boom, 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 boom. All right. And for some of us, that's actually a way of caring because you're optimizing for the humans, right? But gosh, it does not work like that. There's been a lot of curveballs. It's been a very nonlinear process. I mean, our faculty know when we talk about faculty unification that I've gone out with timelines and quasi promises of, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then we're still here waiting, and that's not that as someone who deeply appreciates caring, that hurts me because I don't that ambiguity makes people feel unsafe, feel like what's going on, the questions arise, and this is just kind of prolonged stress. And I wish I could engineer and fix it, but I keep being continually surprised about the curveballs. And again, it's not, I think it's easy to dismiss these curveballs or interruptions in our process as being something with ill intent. And for the most part, that's really just not true at all. It's just the way things are going. We've had major leadership turnover at the university. There's some major changes going on in Washington, D.C. right now that you might have read about. There are a variety of things that knock us off course. But, our WASC visit, as most of you know, was last week. And we had, I just want to thank the teams led by Teresa Kirk and others that just did a tremendous job with that again. But I'll tell you, we danced around unification and kind of talked about where that is, but also saying we don't know exactly where things are going with the Department of Education and everything else. But what they reported back that they saw most of all was this shift in our culture, and the culture of care was called out. Our work in putting our students first in that shift was called out, and just absolute recognition that we are wired toward caring. And that's enormously helpful as we think about the fits and starts of moving our unification along. It's really being recognized that that's exactly what we're doing, and we're mission focused, students first institution that's doing a great job with that. And we'll have more detailed announcements when we get actually anything formal from WASC. So I can't say anything other than what they kind of represented at the exit verbally, but it was really great. And your work, and I say yours to everyone who's on this call, in caring for students came through.
Thanks for that answer. Going back to the engineering mindset, I'm someone who definitely thinks their value is related to how much I can help people solve problems and things like that. And I've learned that for me to solve a problem myself, I have to have too much control over too many factors. And it sounds like you're describing a lot of other factors that are out of your control that make it a challenge.
Let control go, Dan.
Yeah, exactly. So, Dr. Simmons, did you have something that surprised you the most about the unification process that you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, a few. I mean, I think the first surprise is just how hard it is. Because I think Blake alluded to this as, as the transition of UAGC over to the leadership of Dr. Packard. I remember that day having a discussion with him. We're like, all right, like 18 months, we'll be good, we'll be unified. And then as we all dug in as an ELT, there's just a lot of moving parts and a lot of change, but then also just some things that we're learning along the way. And along with that, I don't think I recognized how stressful it was going to be. That, with all of this and stressful of decision making, just stressful of seeing how it affects people who report to us, seeing how it affects people that are on the outside looking in, seeing how it affects the governor who writes a letter about it. So I think that has been something that was unexpected. And I think all this ties into, we're on the surface, global campus and AZO have a lot of similarities when you look at demographics and recruitment and all these. But once you move down a few levels, we're actually very different in approaches, in business process, in the way that we go about instruction. And this has been something that has been actually very fun because as faculty members, as people involved in higher education, I believe I can firmly say we all value learning. And when you're faced with something that's different than yourself or the way you normally operate, there's a lot of learning to be had, and there's a great value in these hardships from whenever I joined the ELT until now, that me as an individual, me as a leader, me as an educator, I've grown immensely. And I think that I can say this for everyone in the ASIO side of the house, that we are better as a result. It may have not always been fun. There may have been some struggles, and there will continue to be. And I don't want to say that there's not going to be, but it is a growth process. It's those growing pains, and I think this is something where it's mutually beneficial to see how the other side operates, and get a little better, continuously improve, and have those conversations. And I think that probably, so you asked for one surprise. So I think the biggest surprise that I had was just being able to immensely grow and learn through this process, and understanding that online education is many things to many different people, and that together we can serve more and serve better.
Nice.
I love that. Love that a lot. I know I've spoken to many leaders that have said this has been a growth process. And I think we've all grown as people, as human beings, and, in how we look at things. So I think that's incredible. So this one might be a little bit harder. We'll give Caleb a break on his voice. We'll start with Blake. So as you look at everything that we've gone through, if you are talking to another organization, whether education or not organization, or not education, another organization, could be anything, tax firm that are merging, what are the direct benefits you think? Because we know there's challenges of carrying. What are those direct benefits you think that two companies could have by using this care lens when they're merging their companies?
Mm. It is a tough question, and and this goes back to not over engineering it like Dan and I would do. It's that at the heart, what we're talking about are social organizations, right? You're not merging two manufacturing processes that then you're just dovetailing to fit together widgets and equipment. And in doing that, and I've actually done a lot of work with this and thinking about the way people actually approach their work and the culture of their work, and what they bring to it, their expertise, also their workflow, and how that happens. Because whatever the organizational form, my experience is that I used to work with school districts that were sometimes consolidating different school buildings and such, that when two units come together and they work slightly differently, you just assume that they just either physically will be in the same space or will be part of the same team or work, that it'll flow. But it doesn't recognize that humans actually work in a social way, in a networked way. And to me, to build that unification within whatever kinds of organizations, you have to think about what is the currency that they work with. And what I mean by currency is what do they trade on? What do people trade on? That could be positive or maybe difficult kinds of trade, but often they're trading on the things that organization values and what they value about their work. And so when we value something like care and we trade on that, it seeps into the way then that we can navigate how that workflow has to change when two things are coming together, and how the actual nature of the work has to come together, because then we have that language, that currency, the way that we talk about, even if you're doing an operational change of I don't know, let's say we start working with our B2B teams a little differently with Arizona Online and Global Campus. We're not doing this yet, folks. It's like an example illustration here, but that we're going and building those partnerships. I mean, it'd be easy to engineer and just think about that in terms of the forms and the agreements that we have and blah, 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 and how we do tuition and the tour or something, and make that very operational. But it might not respect the way that we build programs, the way that we attend to students who are in those business organizations. Like a variety of things may culturally be different, and the currencies that we trade on as we make that work, not one better than the other. But how do we then navigate and make that shift? So in any organization, I think what's very, very difficult is to understand that currencies. And what often happens is one takes over another, and they presume because they know how to do that in their currency that they know how to do that in the other currency. And so even if this is a kind of an elongated process here, what I really appreciate about what Gary is doing in the way that we unify is not one taking over the other. What we're doing is bringing a team together to serve our students. And that allows us more time to think about our currencies and the way that we work and how we could do that so that we come out with the best way of doing that going forward. Or at least that's what I observe is going on. I just think it takes longer, but I think it will ultimately have a smoother outcome.
I think that's great. And just myself knowing the process and having walked through this process with you all, I'll highlight too, I think part of the challenge, but the importance is the fact that you all are listening. And you don't just give lip service for people to give feedback. And so sometimes things take longer when you're asking for people's feedback and really trying to make those best decisions. And I feel like both sides of the house have really done a great job at listening and applying, and that makes things take longer. And I think other organizations need to realize that sometimes it's not about when that final due date is. It's about what that best decision is overall. And I think you all have done a fantastic job on that. Caleb, anything additional on advice to other organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I like the framing, Michelle, of what if it's not an education, and when you added that portion to it, it made me think a little bit more about the question, because as an organization, if we remove it from education, for us, we have a very unique thing about what we're trying to do, is that our customers are also our products. That what we can be proud that we produce is people who walk away with the education, and so the actual education isn't the product, but the individual is, who is the customer. So if you think about any organization and the things that you need to really care about, you're going to have your customers, your product, and your people. And that really, if we look at it, we can boil that down into two for us. We have our product, our students, and our people, and that is who we are, and that is what we need to be at the end of the day. So for any organization, if we focus in on that and actually care about that and take pride in our people and our students, we're far ahead, I guess, philosophically, than someone else who is starting from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
Going back to the currency sort of analogy. I think that's super interesting. It reminds me of a YouTube video where it's these two neighbors and it's this escalating competition between them, and the currency is clearly what kind of duties can I do to take care of the other neighbor, but it's actually ends up being a competition. So it starts with the one guy's like, hey, I mowed a little extra into your yard because it needed. Oh, thanks. Well, guess what? I already, fixed your smoker in the back. I knew you had a problem. It's like, oh, really? I re-roofed your whole house already. And it's just like this escalating competition. And I was just thinking about how those currencies could be different in different cultures, so interesting point. But, so I do have another question lined up, but we have one from the audience that I want to ask. It's maybe a little more direct, tangible one. This is most likely for Blake here. How are you capturing the impact of this merger on the faculty/staff at UAGC? And I think maybe that's asking, is there a tool being used to officially?
I love that question. We've sort of lost what I think there was past practice I heard about of like sort of tiny pulse surveys and other understandings of the temperature checks of our organization that I'd love to get back to. What I intend to do, whether it's a tool or not, is that the way that we go about our annual review process, which is coming up, will include sort of this 360 feedback moment. What I mean by that is typically these review processes are, look at the employee, talk about them, and that is central. And I want them to use that as a moment that they can lift ideas about both their own experience, but what can we then learn as an organization, as our leaders then aggregate a lot of that information and understand where we are. Because I hear anecdotally, and maybe that's what's behind that great question, that this is stressful. This isn't going well for some of our teams, some of our folks. This is particularly with our faculty who are anxious about their status in the future at the organization. This is creating a lot of anxiety, and I totally get that. And so I want to have a moment where we put a finer point on that and then navigate them what we can do about it. ELT is here in Tucson, as I mentioned, and we're one of the things we've talked about is the continued ambiguity that we live under, and that is creating stress. And so part of that is just how do we manage that? We can drop into the culture of care rooms where we have some mindfulness and some times to sit aside and be together. So I appreciate that. And things like our care circles, the other things that's you don't need a leader to start that stuff. We've got such brilliant people that are already doing good stuff like that. But anyway, that's my hope. But if folks have other ideas of a way to get at that information or ways to understand what's going on with folks, I'm really happy to hear what would be a better way of doing that.
And
Thanks.
if I could jump in and add a little bit from the AZO side, and I think this is probably applicable to UAGC as well. And I want to respect the perspective that this is a difficult moment. And no matter how much feedback we request, there's actually never enough communication, because we are living in such a world of ambiguity, and that is entirely frustrating. And that's such not the answer that people want to hear. And so, I know we've done things in AZO, anonymous Qualtrics surveys to be able to get that. And we've kind of taken a break from that as we're trying to figure out town halls. But even then, I think oftentimes when the questions and the feedback were given, a lot of times the responses come across as platitudes, that we're just saying, something vague and politically correct, but not giving a real answer. And I think that is one of the difficulties of a culture of care, is wanting to provide a feedback loop, but often just not having any answers. And that is extremely dissatisfying whenever you're the one asking the questions and wanting something. And it's not something. I had a lot more hair and a lot less gray when we started this process. So it's stressful to be on the other side and say, I hear your question, and we may be working towards something, but it's not finalized yet, and so we can't share it. And then a roadblock comes up and we have to change. And so there seems like there's just never really any resolution. So I just wanted to bring that up, that I know that's dissatisfying to everyone. And unfortunately, that's still the world we're living in. And I can guarantee you it's not because we don't want to be transparent and don't want to give information. We just don't have any firm information to share.
I think that transparency of saying we don't know is important too. Really, really important when we're in middle stages of things. So thank you for that. I think it's so important to say we don't know, and not many people are willing to do that. I think we've got time for
permission for that, because that's the answer a lot, Michelle.
Right, it is. My poor team. I have to say that a lot too. Dan, do we have one more question? I think we've got about 2 minutes left if we want to do one more.
Yeah, sure. So the question for whoever wants to answer it first is, if you were to go back in time in a DeLorean with a flux capacitor, and you were to run up on yourself, what heads up would you give yourself related to this transition?
Oh, I've got one real quick. I can be fast since we're it's because I'm a policy guy. Institutionally, I worked in state and federal policy. Some people know, whatever. So I went in going, okay, what are the policies? What are the rules? We're going to do this or whatever like that. And the wonderful University of Arizona works on two levels. One is the policy, and then one is sort of like the British Constitution that's not really written down, but things work in a certain way, and you kind of got and I'm completely blindsided by that. So I think Caleb probably tried to warn me and it didn't click that, there's a side way this really works.
And for me, I just think I would go back and tell myself, this is going to take longer than you think.
Yes. Yeah.
I think as a past artist, I think that resonates, because I think even an artist creating something thinks they can do it in 10 days and it takes a year. So I think anytime you're trying to create something beautiful and balanced and that others can look at as beautiful too is not easy. So I know from the Culture of Care Council, the Culture of Care Summit committees, we want to thank both Blake and Caleb for being willing to come in and have this conversation, because so many of us do see care at that foundation for us. And we appreciate the growth that we've had in care at our organizations as we unify with University of Arizona initiatives, and really looking forward to the finality, of course, just like everyone. But at the same time, just really happy this time happened now in a crucial time where decisions are kind of being finalized. And just really thank you all for your transparency and your leadership and just your openness to have this conversation. Any last words from either one of you? And we just want to say thank you.
No, just thanks everyone. It's fun to huddle and have a conversation. I hope that there's more great learning on care practices today in tomorrow.
I will say y'all looked a little stressed. Maybe one of our box breathing rooms or our meditation rooms might be good today. Those are available. Dan, do you have any last words?
I've got a box in the back of my room that I use to breathe in. I just put my head in it. But other than that, no, I've got nothing. Thank you very much.
Caleb, any last thoughts? And then we'll let you all go back to work.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone for attending. We're trying to do something great here, and I appreciate everybody, all of your efforts in doing that and serving our students. So let's keep it up. It's not easy, but I know we can do it.
Great. Thank you for all who attended. You should have a voting button in there if you want to nominate this session for the Clifford Blizzard Award, as well as a link back to the website to choose your next session. So thank you again for coming, and thank you again, Blake and Caleb. Really appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dan.